Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and on this podcast, we go week to week, breaking down a popular streaming title. And in today's episode, we are at the penultimate episode of this, I think, one and only season of a series called Furious on Hulu and Disney, which, as far as I can tell, is very popular for us here on the podcast. One of the biggest hits shows we've had here ever, honestly. And also looks like it's in the ratings continuously. It looks like it is growing. And by the way, it just seems like one of those shows, like when I say we're watching Furious on the podcast, you know, even just Joe Schmo on the street, they're like, oh, we're watching that right now too. So it just seems to be like something that everybody's watching.
So good.
Because it's actually good. Yes. Joining me for the conversation is Sona. Sona, how have you been?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I think we're going to see you this weekend, correct?
Yes, that's right. We will see you on Saturday.
So that's great. We'll get to see you. And then we might see you again next week. How does this work? Oh, yes, because the holiday. Yes. Okay. I'm confused because it seems like the holiday is later this year than it's supposed to.
It is later. It doesn't just seem that way.
Yeah,
it is later.
True. Correct.
So yes, we will be out having our week-long vacation on the North Fork of Long Island, and your family is so welcome to join us if you can get out there.
Yeah, I think we'll try to make it out for at least a day. It'll be fun to see you guys again. And that's the end of the season, of course. Sona, since the last time I spoke to you, I have watched something that I've never watched all the way through. And apparently, I mean, I knew that I had blonde spots in here anyway, but it was a very interesting experience, which was I have started rewatching The Sopranos.
Oh, so good.
And I have, first of all, I have never rewatched The Sopranos. I watched it when it was on the air, and I didn't have HBO, so I would like watch it at friend's house or my girlfriend's house, ex-girlfriend's house, and we would watch it when it was convenient to watch. And it was on continuously. Like, you know, even though we didn't have like a DVR or whatever, it was pretty easy to like just pop it on. It would just be on all the time. And then they would, if you miss an episode, they would like do a marathon before the finale. So all that is to say that I had seen almost the entire show, but I definitely knew there were missing episodes here and there. So I watched the first season all the way through, by the way. Went down so easy, shockingly. And now I've watched the first two seasons. And a couple of, first of all, my question for you is, when was the last time you've actually watched a chunk of the show again?
I every now and then will find myself watching it, but not frequently. I would say the last time I've seen an episode of The Sopranos was probably a couple years ago.
The reason I mention that is because...
Do you think it doesn't hold up?
Oh, no, not at all. I just,
you liked it.
Yes, I absolutely did like it. And my revelations about it, a couple, but one, the primary revelation I made is it's so early in the whole idea of like the prestige TV format that I really wanted to bring it up as a counterpoint to the show Furious, which we're covering now, which of course has been excellent. But we have such different expectations of what a TV show is supposed to be now. Like Furious, of course, is incredibly addictive and just keeps escalating from week to week. And can't wait to see the next episode. Can't wait to, you know, see how this whole resolves. Whereas The Sopranos was very much in between, like a prestige show. And obviously, you wouldn't see this type of language and the nudity and the graphic violence that you would have expected to see at that time. So that was all groundbreaking. But as TV, like the formula of TV, it very much is TV. There are so many episodes, and they're all excellent episodes. The first thing really surprising was that like every episode is excellent, right? Mm-hmm. But they're also very much like it's made in a way like old TV was, where you can walk out of the room and go make dinner and kind of listen in the background and still be able to follow along. And
now we need to be engaged every second.
Exactly. And that's a huge difference. Like I say, like with just rewatching Furious to take notes for this conversation, there was more stuff I forgot the first time around. Right? You have to watch very, very closely. With The Sopranos, which made it very easy, which is the reason I kind of just binged the whole season, because I could just keep it on while I was doing other things, is that yes, it is it's excellent. You definitely have to pay attention from moment to moment, but especially if you're familiar with the general dynamics, the simple fact is like 4, 5, 6 episodes in a row go where you see the antagonism between these characters developing, where Tony's has another fit, where his mother is an absolutely horrible person. But you could skip 2 or 3 of those episodes, which I don't recommend, by the way. Like every episode is excellent. They're all excellent consistently. But at the same time, you could have skipped 2 or 3 of those episodes and you really didn't miss anything essential to the big, of course, once again, like traditional television, the first couple episodes are very, very important. The last couple of episodes of the season, very, very important. But then in the middle, if you miss 2 or 3 of those episodes, you really don't feel like you lost the plot. And I think that is where it kind of is old school TV. The assumption is when you're watching television linearly and you don't have a DVR and you don't have it on DVD and you don't have it on a streaming platform, that people will miss episodes. So if you miss the episode, you're okay. Which is like such a much lower stress version of watching television than it is now. Where if you miss an episode, you're like, you just watched it previously on Furious.
Why bother watching it again?
And it's just, it's so dense with information.
Well, but anyway, another way that phones have ruined our culture.
Yes, it has in a way. But so it's pretty funny that it was a surprising rewatch. But yeah, that was the other thing I think. One was, of course, that kind of like much more relaxed way of allowing yourself to walk out of the room and allow yourself to skip a couple of episodes and you're still doing fine. And then of course the other thing is the revelation that it's not like, well, they really nailed it at the end and there's bad scenes in the bad episodes in the middle. And we kind of overall, I'm kind of like the season where it's just like consistently every episode that just, it's following a formula, but it's like, that's a great episode. That's a great episode. And that's a great episode. Pretty amazing.
Brilliant TV.
Just stacking up one after the other. Although I remember in watching it that some seasons were rougher than those first couple. So I'm curious to see where the show itself starts to experiment with its format. And, we'll see how that goes as I go on. But my rewatch so far, very enjoyable.
And it has a lot of seasons in its defense.
So many. I honestly was like, this is going to be a relatively
8?
Short.
Maybe 8?
I think it was 6, but the last season is very long. I do know the episode count. There's 80 or approximately, I think it's 85, 82 or 85, somewhere in the 80s. So 80 something episodes is a pretty long rewatch. Okay. Something that.
Well, hold on.
Yes.
As a complete 180 to that.
Sure.
What I spent my weekend binge watching was the series that we've talked about before called Adults.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Because season 2 is premiering soon. We heard it was good. I had watched one episode earlier in the year. I actually didn't love it. Yep. It was, I think, the 3rd episode. I don't know why we watched the 3rd.
That was the one you chose to watch.
But probably it was automatically fed to us somehow, right? And then it was just on. But we started it from the beginning. We watched it all the way through. And I have to say, this is not the type of humor that normally really does it for me. It's a little bit over the top. It's a little bit absurd. It's a little bit graphic. It's usually not my thing, but I have to say, almost every episode had at least one moment that had me laughing until I had tears in my eyes, which is really all you can ask of a comedy, right? So I highly recommend it, actually.
A couple of things I want to piggyback onto that. I never finished the series, but I think I watched the first 4 episodes. I think you picked the 3rd one, which was the one that I did not like of the first 4. So you might have just unhappily picked the wrong one that just by chance how you saw it. But I had seen the first episode, the first couple episodes, especially the first one really made me laugh a lot. And I think it was the 4th one that really, it's the one where the guy ends up dating potentially like a serial killer. Which
that was the best of all of them.
Just same experience. I just laughed so much. And it's kind of contrived. It's working a little too hard, but just so funny multiple times per episode, like you mentioned. And yet that was the last episode, which was probably my favorite, the one where the guy thinks he's hooking up with a serial killer. And that was maybe my favorite episode. And yet I didn't go back to it. But the reason I want to double down on what you're saying is because this very week, season 2 comes back.
That's right.
And the other reason I mentioned is because it seems like FX also had kind of mixed feelings about the show, and the ratings weren't that good, but they just had confidence. It's very rare to see this nowadays. Just had confidence that this team of people had figured out the show. And basically season 2 is like a soft reboot of the whole thing. So if anybody, for whatever reasons, didn't quite gel with season 1, maybe all of us, you and I included, Sona, should just watch season 2. This kind of, like I said, they're almost like saying, you don't have to watch season 1. We're like kind of refactored the show and see how that works for season 2. And I think that they figured out what works well in the show, and they're just going to kind of hone in on those things. So, because I agree, like maybe some of that stuff, that awkwardness of like trying too much to be too plot heavy, instead of just like having almost like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, just kind of like a bunch of gags around a very loosely tied together by the themes. And maybe that is the direction they're going in, because I agree. I thought even when I thought the performers had really good chemistry, and I thought just from as far as just laughing out loud, it was funnier to me than like the second season of the English Teacher, for example, which I thought was still funny.
The second season, yeah,
it was still funny, but not as funny as the adult show was. Even though it, like I said, maybe not perfect, but you know what? I was curious to see season 2 even more so.
Yeah, I really think that on paper, I should not like this show. There's a lot of things about it that I generally don't like, but I don't know what it is, but it managed to get past all of that because I was laughing until I cried several times.
Oh, and something else that's been recommended to us on the Patreon before, and there's our pitch for the Patreon, by the way. It's totally free, and even when the content will be paywalled in the near future, within the next couple of months. If there's anything you haven't listened to on there that you want to check out, do subscribe now. But of course, the conversation is always free, so please feel free to go there and have a conversation. But something that somebody recommended to us on there was Trying. And this is another show that also I just threw on, probably because Lucky had ended, like some Apple TV series just wrapped up. And this show has been fed to me over. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It was Ted Lasso, of course, an English comedy. So I caught up on the Ted Lasso, this current season of Ted Lasso. And then Trying had been like the first episode of Trying had started like 15 times. And finally, I allowed it to play through. And I loved it. It's a really impressive, very funny, also very funny. But unlike Adults, which didn't really kind of gel all the other stuff it was trying to do, this is subtly really poignant and really makes you have these like bracing moments of confronting very painful things about being in a relationship or seeing an ex again for the first time in a long time. And it's just kind of really beautiful moments. And the material can be tough sometimes, but it is also just so funny as well. So
I've got to watch that.
I can't remember who recommended this to us, but yes, it is a really good watch. And I think on Rotten Tomatoes, every single season has like 100% except for the first season. And I'm only in the first season and I love every episode so far. So if it gets better after here, well, that's fantastic. But it's been on for quite some time. This is also a long, like 50 or 60 episode watch, not a binge, I guess. You can watch it when you want to. So I don't even know if I'm going to make it all the way through the show, but I'm like 4 or 5 episodes into it. And another really excellent recommendation from the patrons. All right. So another excellent show, of course, is this episode of Furious, which is called, got to pull my notes. It is called Some Days It Don't Come Easy, which of course is the very first line of dialogue in that Meatloaf song. I would do anything for love, parentheses, but I won't.
I didn't realize that.
By the way, parentheses. I love a parenthetical. I put parentheses in everything. And now I don't do parentheticals anymore. I use M dashes because AI apparently hates parentheses and it turns them all into M dashes. I don't know why.
Okay. First of all, I love parentheses. I have to go back and edit my emails because I have put a parentheses into almost every sentence. And it sounds like I have gone off the deep end and cannot like I have an inner voice that's demanding to be heard in every single sentence.
Split personality.
So I literally have to go back and be like, that can just be a new sentence, period.
Yes.
But I am on a vendetta against M dashes because they have become so overused. I actually was editing a piece of writing the other week, and I thought, you know what? Maybe I'm the one that's wrong. And I
Yes.
Googled the
Yes.
proper use of M dashes, and it said right there, use sparingly for emphasis only.
You know what? Then I need to make that revision because I never double check that. I run, a lot of my text, obviously, through a grammar check, and I write for a living now. And I love parentheses, and my parentheses are always turned into M dashes. And I eventually, like you said, I had that same voice where I'm just like, I guess I'm wrong. Or maybe styles have changed because I'm going to just leave the M dashes in there. I'm not going to make them parentheses anymore. So I'm very glad I will go back to using parentheses if that's the case, because you are correct. These grammar checks and all the AI, they love M dashes. My God, they love M dashes.
The paragraph I was looking at had 4 separate sets of M dashes in a single paragraph. So 8 M dashes all together in a single paragraph. Just the same way that some of my parentheticals need to be their own independent sentences, some of those M dash clauses need to be their own independent sentences.
You know what, though? But that's the other thing that it also has corrected for me is that now when I see an awkward M dash, I'm look at that and I'm like, I shouldn't have put that in parentheses. It is now a separate
it's
sentence.
Clear to me now.
Yes. Now that I got annoyed by the M dash, I'm like, you know what? That was actually a separate thought. So I'll just put that in a separate period. Let's just do a period.
I also, now that we're starting down this grammar road, which I hope, because we do need to talk about the show eventually, I hope this word comes to an end soon, but I also can't help myself because I'm like a grammar nerd. I really favor short sentences. So a lot of the times, whether it's the parenthetical or it's the M dash, it's a sign that you have let your sentence go on too long. Just end it. Just end it.
Yes, but I do
Start
like
a new one.
but I still like my parentheses for the sarcastic aside, which, of course,
that is a whole other thing.
Which I get, like, of course, there's so many,
the rules change.
There's so many sarcastic asides for me here when I'm verbally talking. The way I express that in my writing is with parentheses. Or M dashes apparently now. But maybe I'm reverting. I have to revert. I have to course correct.
We could all benefit from taking a look at our parenthetical and M dash usage.
True. Absolutely. Okay. So before we get into the breakdown, so many things happen in this episode. So many things are clarified for us, of course. Sona, in general, how does this feel to you as a penultimate episode? The ratings, when I say ratings, I don't mean the viewership ratings. I mean like the audience ratings, the scores on like Internet Movie Database. The show opened with like a 7, almost an 8, which is a good score for an average score. But I think last week's episode had almost a 9 average rating. Think about that, like an average of 9.
Amazing.
Pretty amazing. So people week to week, it's basically people are going, and that one was better, and that one was better. And that, do you feel like this one is taking it up another notch, or in general, how did you feel like this episode?
I do feel like it took it up a notch, but in a way that feels exactly right for a penultimate episode of setting up the really big stuff that's going to come in this last episode. So probably all in all, if I had to pick between last week and this week, I probably liked last week's episode better, but so much happened this week that was important on its own and is going to be important for next week that it was really exciting to watch.
Yeah, I agree. I think last week was the better episode in general, but to your point, there's a lot of work that has to happen in the penultimate episode, and this balanced all that work with character development, with fun twists, with comedy, like a really perfect blend of what it needed to do to set up. And it made me think of like The Wire, for example, where The Wire was like this too, where a lot of times, like, and by the way, The Furious is not a messy show, but The Wire sometimes would feel in a season like there was a lot of different things going on. And then all of a sudden, like, you get to that late in the season episode. And I think The Wire was definitely a show that had its wrap up episode in the penultimate episode, like you had mentioned before. And then the finale was more like setting up and kind of like a coda to the season plus setting up the next season, as opposed to, but there was a lot of like, the season would be diffuse and then it would kind of really come together, like tightly scripted right before you get to the end of all those plot payoffs. And this is what it felt like, that where it's like everything is still but unlike that, by the way, in that example, this is not a messy season at all. This is a really expertly plotted and scripted, and
for sure.
The character arcs are all very clearly defined. We love all these characters, like Choi. Hey, Choi's like maybe my favorite character right now.
Choi's on a redemption arc, for
absolutely
sure.
on a redemption arc. Yeah,
for
exactly.
sure.
And like literally, he was like a character you love when you first see him, because like you mentioned, he's such a type that you hate. But man, he's really coming around, I got to say.
Yes, Choi is on a redemption arc, and I am here for it. I agree. He might end up being one of my favorites by the end of this.
Yeah, I did love him this episode particularly. I mean, it's still pretty small, but just like you said, just that he's like piecing it together. I really like seeing him do the work.
Yeah, I like it too. And I will say, just from a bigger story perspective or whatever about this show, which has been so tightly written that I had confidence anyway in it sticking the landing. But it's nice when all of this happens in the penultimate episode, because then you don't get worried about like, how are they going to jam resolving all of this into the last episode? That can't possibly be good. So it's kind of nice that they are following this progression where you feel like it's not going to be a frantic scramble to tie up all the loose ends in the last episode.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, we can leave that for the very end, but just to kind of preface that point, that I feel like the finale is going to be very intimate. Like the stakes are going to be very intimate, and a lot of like really ugly truths will be spoken in a couple of rooms among a handful of people, rather than, like you said, all the logistical knot tying that has to occur. Right. So they've done most of that now so that we can be very focused on the finale. And then hopefully there'll be enough. I mean, I'm pretty sure there'll be enough time in the finale to have like some kind of big confrontation and then the fallout therefrom. But like you said, they said a lot of table setting in this one episode. And again, just makes you feel like really confident, like the show knows where it's going and what it's doing. So we picked up immediately from last week. Alice is on the way to the hospital, as is Marshall. Marshall survived, by the way. We felt like we were kind of worried that this guy worried. I mean, I really wasn't worried, but, I suspected that he probably would have, that would have been a kill shot for him, but has somehow survived, at least temporarily.
Well, they said that she saved him.
She did what she was supposed to do.
So, yeah.
Nora berates her for saving him.
Yeah. I have to say, okay, I love this show so much. It's hard for me to criticize it. But I did feel like some of the opening scenes of this episode were like strangely stilted from what we've seen before. You get what I'm saying or no?
I didn't feel it at the beginning as much, although maybe the directing is just not. By the way, did you see who the director was for this? It's
I didn't.
I wrote it down and I can't remember his name. Corey Finley was the director here, he's done a lot of TV recently, but started as a film director, and he directed Thoroughbreds, which we reviewed here on the podcast. So all that to say that he comes more from like a stage background. So maybe he's just not as good with the action stuff, I would say. But I have a criticism for in a different place in the episode. I'm waiting. I'm curious to get your take.
I felt it a little bit in this scene with Alice and Nora, where it was hard to judge Nora's sincerity to me. Like I didn't know she was trying to light a fire under Alice or she really meant what she was saying, which I think is part of the deal with Nora, but it was coming across in a little bit of a stilted way to me, I thought. And then, but more so in the scene in Alice's apartment with Danny, I was kind of like, is Alice still high? Like she's talking in a way that is not normal for Alice. And I understand she was saying things that were not normal for Alice to be saying as well, asking Danny to stay over and all of that. But it just came across as like kind of strange to me. I don't know. Maybe it was in my head.
You know what, though? Thought that was intentional, but
it may be.
But it's interesting that you bring them up because in both of those cases, maybe this is what you were picking up on. I'm not sure I bought what the characters were saying, but I thought that might be intentional. So, for example,
yes, when Nora, I agree with you there. Yes. Agreed.
when Nora makes that whole performance of, we could have had everything we wanted, blah, blah, blah. And then when she kind of has it thrown back in her face. And I did like that back and forth, by the way, where she's just like, well, you're a drunk. And she just, yes. So, but at the same time, when that, like you said, it plants a seed, we see that whole conversation come full circle by the end of the episode, where
of course,
Alice becomes exactly that thing.
Yes.
And Nora's reaction to that is, what the hell are you doing? Right. So,
Yes.
and that's the reason I mentioned that, like, she might have been chastising Alice to make herself feel better and like accuse her of not doing all the work, which is a way of her to criticize herself, but also make herself feel better that no one else is doing the work either. So Nora's just going to quit and give up. And then because then when Alice does act in the way she supposedly wants her to act, she's surprised, like, what the hell's going on here? And she calls her supervisors, you know what I mean? So it feels like, in a way, she wasn't fully sincere in what she was saying. And I also wonder, especially on the rewatch, I just rewatched it before we talked, and the whole conversation between her and Danny, which we'll get into, we'll break it down in more detail in just a moment. But when they were doing that back and forth, and she's like, I really love you, and it felt wrong. Like, that whole conversation felt like, is she, and it made me think, especially on the rewatch, is she saying this because she's like, I want that to be true, but is it true or not? And of course, the other irony of that scene is, if it is sincere, it doesn't go the way, she's exposed herself emotionally, which she doesn't like to do. And it doesn't go at all the way she planned. So they're both complicated scenes. So it's interesting that you had this issue with them.
Yeah, fair.
But again, maybe I'm thinking it might be intentional. That they might be.
Maybe so.
But yeah, it's definitely worth talking about.
I also didn't understand logically what Nora was trying to say to Alex, that if she hadn't saved Marshall, they would have everything that they wanted to have happen in developing this case. I didn't really understand how the result would be different if she had let Marshall die.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how far. Well, she could have, if Marshall, because she had boyfriend trouble, Marshall was there. But I see what you're saying. So, you know what, though?
She was emphasizing the decision between saving him and letting him die. And I didn't understand how that decision at that point in time would have changed the outcome of everything.
Yeah, Nora's full of it. And maybe Nora feels bad for the fact that, I mean, what does she feel bad for? She had the coverage.
Yeah, she did the right thing. Yeah.
Ed was the one. So Nora did what she was supposed to do. Ed's the one who messed her up, without telling her. So she didn't know this was happening. And if Nora hadn't been drunk or whatever, she still would have done the right thing. There wasn't anything additional that she needed to do other than maybe her physically be there rather than going to meet with Ed. But I think she's supposed to report to Ed. So she didn't really necessarily do anything wrong. But I see your point, because she's kind of blaming him, like, you had boyfriend trouble. And that's true, because you had boyfriend trouble. He was there and screwed this up. But she was also high on fentanyl and had lost her weapon. Yeah. So it's not like if he wasn't there and she just runs away with her arm in hand, that Alice, what did she do? Tackle her to the ground? Alice would have probably just stumbled onto the curb and collapsed.
Yeah, she barely made it out the door.
Exactly. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I see your point. Nora's full of it here. So she's just trying to be spiteful here, but it doesn't make sense because her logic doesn't hold up at all. And of course, Alice doesn't even refute her that hard because she feels guilty about how everything played out, but it's not her fault either.
Right.
She, she was high on fentanyl and her backup was not there. So none of that played out like it was supposed to. What did you make of the scene where Marshall his mom meets up with Danny at the hospital there? Danny's just like, I'm here just to see Alice. And Marshall's mom is like, are you even a police officer anymore?
Oh my gosh, isn't she just the worst? Holy cow.
Really the worst.
I do think as much as Troy is on a redemption arc, I did feel like Danny was the MVP of this episode. Just the way he dealt with a whole bunch of people that are terrible was very admirable to me. So I liked seeing them interact. I liked seeing Danny dig in his heels. She is just so awful, isn't she?
She's terrible. And all she cares about is protecting her son, of course. And her son, honestly, any mom whose son is about to die right now is only thinking about that, obviously. So I think that in this particular case, she was probably acting like any mom would be, thinking about her son potentially dying. But in general, she raised a really terrible kid. So that's just.
And Alice, we know that Alice saved him. And here she is exposing all these truths about Alice. Yes, in reaction to a threat from Danny, but still, I didn't appreciate it.
Yeah, I didn't like it either. She's a very unlikable character, obviously.
Yeah.
Of course, big reveal here. This is what the show does well, where, you kind of take this very emotional confrontation, which is completely legitimate. And it makes perfect sense that these two characters are in the hospital at the same time as well and have this exact conversation. But we also get some plot detail here, right? That she had lost her child, quote unquote, lost. So that's my first question for you. Do you think this is lost? Like, you think she gave it up for adoption and just said, like, I miscarried or whatever because she didn't want to deal with it? Or did she have an abortion? Or did she miscarry? If you had to guess on one of those, what would you guess at this point?
Well, Marshall's mom was definitely implying that she had an abortion and that it was some sort. It is a sin in certain religions. I shouldn't minimize that. She's definitely implying it was an abortion. But I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't know the whole truth of it either. So I thought it was interesting that Marshall's mom is saying, like, I found her on the street. Like, I don't know how I thought she came to know that family, but I didn't think it was that Marshall's mom came across her living on the street and decided to take her home. But that is the way this woman is explaining it having happened.
I don't think she said she met her, that she adopted her from this home. She was at a group home. She'd been living on the streets. I think that means not that she literally pulled her off the streets, but she, like, metaphorically, right? That
maybe
she was living on the streets and then ended up at this group home. So that's what she was doing at that time. But you think about the math here. She does the, foster parenting when she's 14 years old. She had been living on the streets, had already lost the child. She was pregnant at 12 years old? That's pretty crazy. And then I don't know if you want to talk about, speculate on how she got pregnant. Yeah.
They said she got kicked out of the house at 14 because she was pregnant.
Oh, at 14. Okay.
In a different episode, not today.
Okay.
In a different episode, they said that.
Oh, I was thinking she was 14 when I guess it could have all happened when she was 14. Maybe she found out she was pregnant when she was 14.
Right.
Had the abortion, let's say, because I'm still thinking that maybe there's a mysterious, she had a child but then that makes the math much more complicated, right? Because she'd have to go to term, which would be almost an entire year, right? So it's probably more the case that she did have an abortion, let's say, and then she adopted her probably soon thereafter. So it all happened within that 14-year window. I don't know if you want to speculate on this now, or we want to save it for the conversation she has with her sister later on, but let's save it for then, because I'm curious about her very messed up family dynamic as well.
Yes, it is very messed up.
So then Nora and Alice have that conversation. Nora's philosophy here, interestingly, is that she says we're inhuman in the defense of humanity and that we become evil to fight evil. So regardless of whether Nora's just trying to protect herself and whether her logic holds up, this importantly is not only Nora's philosophy, I think, it is what Alice takes to heart here, right? Because Alice, very importantly, we've seen this the whole entire season of the show, all the paralleling between her and Kat, that when she has Kat dead to rights, she now is manipulating and acting like Kat herself, and also taking everything that Nora has said to her and thinking the same way, being like, there are no rules anymore to this. It's the only way to fight this kind of evil is to be worse than everybody else, and morally, that is.
Yeah. And not feel bad about doing it because you're doing it for the right reason.
And but to your point, I think there's that interesting moment where Alice turns it around on her and goes, where was my backup? And why doesn't Nora just say like Ed pulled the backup? Like maybe she
I
doesn't
don't
want,
know.
you know?
Yeah,
Because I mean,
I don't
she's not,
know.
she wasn't the one who didn't send the backup team. And
I
instead,
agree.
Nora, like, deflects the criticism by saying, you're too soft. It's fine. It's fine. You're too soft. I knew you couldn't do this, right? Which again is like kind of really stokes a fire. But I don't think that's Nora's intention. I think she's just, again, just trying to protect herself from, but like I said, she's not the one who did anything wrong. It was Ed. Was she, do you think she was defensive because she was drunk? I mean, she's always drunk. I don't think that was, she wasn't trying to cover that up, right? So.
But what she does try and cover up somewhat is Ed and everything that relates to Ed. So
Yes.
I don't know if she's trying to maybe keep things relating to Ed insular so that she can be responsible for some repercussions on Ed. I don't know, but she does seem like she doesn't want to out how evil Ed is to anybody else for some reason.
But she did specifically in that same conversation say, Ed's taken the case away from me. He says I'm a drunk.
True.
So,
True.
And that's what Alice says, you are a drunk.
Yeah.
but it is, but given that fact, the why not just say that Ed also pulled the detail off and that's why you were left exposed. But why not tell her? I mean, like it is, again, she's not the one who abandoned her.
I mean, I think that's part of why I found this scene strange and stilted. And I was trying to figure out if she was sincere or she was trying to set up something, because it doesn't make sense.
And how do you feel about that? Do you think that in general, do you think the show agrees with Nora that this is correct, that this is what you need to do? You have to fight fire with fire. And that if she doesn't start breaking rules, then all these rule breakers are going to keep getting away with it? Or do you think this show is seeing her as like, this is, the ghost of Christmas future for you. If you don't get your shit together, you're going to be Nora someday. You know what I mean?
Well, she took it to heart, didn't she?
Yes. Well, I mean, but she's now saying, oh, I'll become Nora and become Kat at the same time in some ways, because they're all trying. I mean, I think very importantly, the show is saying that these people are all working off the books, which is kind of how it has to work, because the system is designed in a way to have all these convenient blind spots when it comes to these type of things.
Yeah, I think this has kind of been Nora's thing the whole time. Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it with you, is that only a certain type of person can do this work and you have to be cut out for it. And these are the things you have to be willing to do. And I think she's been presenting that idea in various ways throughout the entire series.
But it hasn't worked out for Nora, right? And Nora has been compromised as well along the way. So I'm not sure she's really the role model. I mean, in a way, she's talking a game that she has not herself been able to be true to, right? So I'm still curious as to what the show's trying to convey there.
Yeah, I guess I assumed that she has many successes. We're just not hearing about them. But
Right,
maybe not.
I mean, she doesn't seem to be very happy at work. So
True.
All right, a couple of sides here, my parentheticals here for the episode. First one is, I mentioned last week that, there's the whole thing in the movies where it's like, we scrub the computer, scrub it. And I'm like,
and you mentioned this last week. Yes.
Right. I'm like, that's baloney. Because, even if you rewrite over the old, locations, file locations, not like all of a sudden, poof, the data disappears. The data is still written on the hard drive. And you could, like, even if it's broken into pieces, you can kind of string them together. And oftentimes this will actually happen with real cases. It's like they can't get the whole video back together, but they got 30 seconds of the video. And that security with the 30 seconds, you see the guy like at the Ring camera or whatever, right? So it's like, you can piece things together. So of course, the tech guy goes, oh, we scrubbed the computer, but we see the history of the transactions. And we're currently piecing these things back together. So Ed should be wary that, I mean, I guess he's just playing the odds that, let's say he is in one of the videos. They're probably not going to be able to reclaim everything on the hard drive. So maybe he's just like, well, I might luck out. And if they get one or two videos that, get someone else, let's say Jay Easton, they'll be happy enough with that. And maybe I'll just dodge a bullet. But he should be playing a little more defensively here.
But I think he is. That's the whole, yeah. I mean, I think he seems sufficiently alarmed. My question was, that was an FBI guy, correct?
Yes.
So I wonder if he thought by giving it back to the police, that would somehow end the process of trying to recover the computer stuff.
I think the police would probably send it to the FBI. They have better experts for that. That's usually the thing you send off, like for DNA. If you have,
I was thinking maybe that was part of the reason that he gave it back to the police, was because that would end the computer part.
I think just like Choi suspects, I think they give it back to the police because a shot police is going to immediately get an overreaction from the local police. And that's his intention, right? To get her to be sure that if they can shoot on sight, better that he allows the cops to do that themselves than to get involved with it.
Fair.
Especially because he shot a cop, right? Which is, of course, going to always
Yes.
reaction like that. That's the tech corner. On the wig corner, I was thinking about when Kat is running down the street, escaping from the shooting, and she dumps her bag with a bunch of stuff in it, and she has the same wig on. I'm like, she needs to switch out this wig. She needs to have some kind of backup wig around. And guess what? She later has a curly wig on. So like, oh, she did have a backup wig somewhere.
I am beginning to think the bag is too noticeable, though.
It's true. Well, that's what she's got all the wigs in there. It's her wig
bag.
She needs it for all the wigs and other paraphernalia. Then we end up at, Alice gets home. Danny's there. Of course, Danny being like, really like the nicest guy in the world. I really worry, by the way, that he might be sacrificial.
Too good for this world.
Yes, exactly. I start worrying. I'm like, oh man, Danny's going to take a, something's going to go bad for Danny.
He's really an amazing guy.
Like you said, too good to live. Too good to live.
Yeah.
I did like their banter back and forth where she says to him that she asked him if he could find a responsible adult to watch her while she went in recovery. And he goes, oh, they don't have a setting for that on your app.
Yeah.
And she asks him to stay. And he's like, stay in here, in the bedroom. And he does stay there and watch her. And the next morning they have this conversation, which you didn't buy, apparently. But let's get into it a little bit. On the one hand, I actually thought that I like that they subverted things here, where it felt like it was going to be a little too easy. All of a sudden, she's like, I love you. I have loved you, I guess, for a really long time. I have to finally admit it to myself. And he's just like, I love you too. Yeah. I love you too, but I got some things I got to tell you first.
That's one of those times that when both of you need to say something, I wish he had just gone first. But did you feel like it came across as sincere from her? Because that's where I was struggling. It just didn't feel like her, the character that we've grown to know.
Yeah, it was awkward. And I don't know if it's an emotional decision on her part because it's something she's not usually open about, for her to struggle to say it, or if she's just trying to convince herself. That's kind of how I read it. Maybe she's just trying to convince herself that is what she really wants. But I did pick up on the awkwardness. It definitely didn't feel like she's just like, there's no reading of it, I think, where she's just so happy to hear this. And it's almost like she had to sleep on it. And then she wakes up the next morning and she goes, I should be into you. But it's and that, it didn't really feel that sincere. But of course, from him, on the other hand, he's like, I do love you, but this is just like such a messed up situation right now. I can't be in this, which he is, again, not only a great guy across the board in being a stand-up person in general, but here making the decision to be like, even if this is something he wants, he's like, I don't want it like this. Like I don't want it to all fall apart when you get your shit together, or I don't want it to, or even him just acknowledging the fact that it's like, I have that in my head right now. I need to be in a different mental space before I can actually even think about that. And
to me, that was the primary thing. And that was like, so assuming that she is being sincere.
Yeah.
I'll give that the benefit of the doubt. It's so devastating that she finally has opened herself up to this, and this terrible trauma from her childhood before she ever met him is the thing that is now in the way. And a trauma, I think, that she has not processed. And like, it just continues to have all of these repercussions in her life. Like, I just found that really devastating for her.
What do you think about the revelation here, intentionally, very much so, that she's like, did you see the video? And he's like, I just saw that you were in it. And then I immediately stopped watching. And Jay Easton is not in the video.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that is who's in this video? Because if the show just wants to be like, she's one of the victims, then just make it Jay Easton, right? But it wasn't Jay Easton. And it wasn't like the lawyer, for example. Maybe the lawyer was covering up. He was one of these people in this group and was covering up for himself. It's not someone that that Danny would have met, because he'd be like, oh, it was another guy, right? So it's some unknown other person, which is an odd choice. So what does the show want us to suspect there?
Well, I think they're making it clear, especially by the end of the episode, that it's a ring of, like the Jeffrey Epstein thing, essentially,
yes,
like a direct parallel, and that they are all sharing this stuff with each other, which they do partly because, unfortunately, that's what they're into, which is awful. But also, what I understand is that there's like an agreement among people who are doing this, so that way they each have something on the other. So nobody can change their mind about it, because then everybody will go down together.
That's interesting. Maybe because I was thinking about the Epstein thing, and maybe because of I was thinking too literally, but I almost was thinking like, oh, these videos are all secret recordings done at one of these parties, like that photograph we saw Easton in. And I'm like, oh man, that's like that's a lot of videos. You know?
Yeah.
When he's scrolling through it.
Yeah.
But what you're saying makes more, and by the way, like you said, I don't know if there were actually any Epstein videos, but I do know that Epstein would oftentimes like get people to, in the tone of the emails, there's clearly that he's like saying, oh, did you have a good time last weekend?
Yeah.
And it's almost like, remember that, and we should do more business. You should give me more money for you to invest. So he definitely was using that as a lever for like hinting at the fact that he had information, or more information than maybe videos. I don't think I've heard about any videos, but maybe that's all a possibility. But what you're saying is interesting too, is that maybe they were like swapping videos. And if this is like a ring of people who shared this stuff with each other, so maybe Alice was surprised. Like I was like, how did Alice not know she's in these videos? Like, was she like at that house before? Was she in the circle of the Easton? Maybe not. Maybe these were just people who were operating separately, but knew each other, and they were sharing those videos with each other. But I still, that's a huge mystery as to how she is kind of surprised to be caught up in this right now.
By the way, way too many questions from Danny in this scene. Just like one question and then some silence, and see if she fills the silence. He was just like rapid fire. Like, did you know? Was it a hidden camera? How could this happen? Like, just,
do you know Jay? Did you
processing a lot?
Yeah, you could read her face, and she's surprised, and then just be like, did you know you were in the videos? And she'd be like, I had no idea. And then try to help her work it out. Yeah. Instead of just being like, did you know Jay? Did you do this? When did it happen? What year was it?
Turned into an interrogation. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm sure he wants to know all those answers. And by the way, it's probably true to his character. You know, he's that type of person. He plays, what is it? He plays checkers, not chess. He plays tic-tac-toe, actually. So, he just has 100 questions and he wants to ask them all at once. So he's very much like what you see is what you get type person, which is why we like him so much. But at the same time, it's not the right way to get the information. From her perspective,
she just told this guy she loves him. She wants to be with him. He says, no, I can't. And this is the reason why. That is a lot.
Yeah. But, think about it. From his perspective, he, of course, is chomping at the bit to have this conversation with her. And he has been biting his tongue this whole entire time, because in his mind, he might think like she was part of these, possibly part of these parties with these other girls. like they were all in the same circle. They were hanging out with the same men. Did like she probably got pregnant from one of these people, and then she maybe was still, even when she was in the home, maybe even later, still had some tenuous connection to some of these people. And she hasn't told me any of this, not only from us being close friends, but during this investigation. Like, I would want to, if I had proof that my partner had been involved in this case we're pursuing this whole entire time and never mentioned it to me, I'd be like, I know this is tough, but I'm in the blind right now.
I'm going to need some answers.
I need some answers. Like, what the hell's going on? But I mean, she just seems confused by all of this.
Yeah, I mean, she is also, remember, she was not even supposed to be alone in the night. A responsible adult needed to be around. So she physically also is still recovering.
Yes, true. Good point. Do you have any theory as to like who that person might be? I mean, was it just we know they said that she was dating some older guy, but do we know who that was? Like, was it just some
No, I don't.
bad boyfriend? Or I guess we'll have to, that's definitely something that is not going to be resolved until the finale.
Yeah, I feel like we've not really been given an indication of that, but at least this clarification answers our questions from last week about like, did she just disassociate from being at Jay Easton's house or with him or whatever, right? Because that wasn't tracking that she had that scene with him, but she didn't seem particularly tuned in to him specifically in that way. So I'm happy we at least resolved that part of the question.
And maybe the next scene in the episode kind of ties into this as well and might be partially what is being conveyed here, because then we see a big revelation here, of course, Jay and Emma Easton, that his daughter Emma, that they are in his mansion. He has this like safe room where there's this young girl in there. And even this old guy dying of cancer, he's got to get his freak on. It's just so disgusting.
Disgusting.
Such a disgusting human being in this show. Now we know I Hope Davis is in this show, not only for this episode, but I'm sure what's going to be very central performance for the finale. I think that's going to be a big tete-a-tete there inside the mansion between all these women next week. But the reason I mentioned this, and we'll talk about this in some length, definitely, but I do want to talk about the final moments where she says to the girl that, I'm glad you could come. He feels much better now. And she stops the door and she sees the wounds on her wrists where she was tied up.
Mm-hmm.
But she also looks at her confused and says, "Who are you?" Which, of course, I think is supposed to be the daughter asking herself, like, "Who are you?" Guess what? You've become this monster. Again, speaking about becoming a monster, over all these women have become monsters. But there's that question that I guess is be like a pointed question about her own identity, like, what have you become? But I do wonder if she's like, "Who are you?" As in, like, if this girl was drugged this whole time, and maybe all these women seem to have memory outages, maybe they've been drugged in some ways.
It's interesting. I didn't think about that at the time, but I think that's a good point.
Because you have Kat obviously has memory blind spots, but Alice does seem confused by knowing that she's in this video, right? So is there just parts of her history that are blind to her as well? So maybe that's what's being represented there. Oh, one more question that I just thought of right now. I was wondering when we went back to, I can't remember his name now, but the Campbell Scott character with the lawyer, that he said that he was trying to protect her. I was trying, like, I can't. And I was like, who could her be? And I'm like, is it this girl, this illegitimate child? And I'm like, doesn't seem to be the case because things have not worked out very well for Elena. But then I'm like, now in this moment, I'm like, was he trying to protect Emma? Maybe he's protecting Emma.
Could be.
Because Emma's, of course, been complicit in this whole thing.
She seems pretty terrible herself, but yeah.
And I'm going to leave it for the very end, Sona, but maybe she's guilty of something else as well.
Ooh. Ah.
Ooh, ah.
The gear has turned in my head and I figured out what you meant.
What did you make of this scene, by the way? I didn't even take notes on this scene, but we should talk about it. The sister's been here in the background of the show multiple times, and then she shows up. A little comedy here, even in this very sad scene, but The fact
my
that she brings
gosh,
the
yes.
pears.
Yes.
And whenever I felt bad, mom used to, oh, give me pears. And then that kind of gets, that becomes sour there when she thinks like, oh, what a nice memory you have of mom. I don't have those type of memories of mom. You know what happened to me? This is how mom treated me. And that kind of course, that always happens with siblings. I'm thinking about it, of course, watching The Sopranos here as well. But it's very interesting to have these siblings that are kind of bound together by their upbringing, but then also have this animosity towards each other for whatever slights they think that they received from their parents. Of course, always going back to the parent. So that's really fascinating. But I love at the end where she almost leaves with the pears, and she's like, take the pears. I wasn't joking. You got to take those goddamn pears away.
I don't want the pears.
But as funny as that is, the very previous line where she's like, I have no interest in you, and I don't want to be your sister, and I don't care about your life, is like really as brutal a conversation as they could have. I'm sure her sister they probably were alienated as when they were younger. They didn't live together. They had different fathers. And then to have this really painful confrontation with her sister. What did you make of having this scene? I mean, the show, again, doesn't even need this scene. So why do you think that it's including this, her burning this bridge with her sister?
Interesting. I hadn't thought about the why at the time. I was just thinking about how, speaking of people processing things in the moment, this is so much for her sister to grasp, because she thinks, oh, we've always had this fraught relationship because my dad is mom's second husband and there was infidelity. And so she thinks that's the reason that all of these, they have all of this baggage, and she's finding out, no, that doesn't help, but it's something completely different and so much worse. So I was feeling for the sister at that point that we start this series with her making Alice a bridesmaid and trying to include her and all of that, and just how I felt for the sister in this scene. But I hadn't thought about why she would be doing this now, I guess because when Danny told her, first of all, when Danny turned her down and then told her about everything, I kind of expected her to flip a switch and turn really rageful.
Yeah.
And I was surprised that she didn't, because it just seems like it would be in keeping with this character to become very, very angry, very fast. So if I'm going to guess, I would say that anger is starting to come out now, that it's sunk in a little bit, and she's just angry about every piece of the chain of events that led her to this place that she's in today. What do you think?
Well, I'm more curious about how, it makes sense for the character for the reasons you just said. And I think about of course, she must have this animosity where her sister is living this parallel life where everything went smoothly for her, and she had the screwed up sister. Yeah, we don't talk about her that much. And now I'm inviting her to be my bridesmaid, and she works in the city, and we're patching things up, and I'm going to bring her some pears because she's not feeling great. And she has this version of life, and that you have to think about Alice's upbringing is incredibly traumatic, like the opposite, like in a horribly abusive, set of situations, potentially. Like I was actually speculating that maybe she was molested in the home by this other male figure, right? So this older man. So potentially, who knows? Like that life, that home could have been an absolute nightmare for her, and her sister's just living this mundane suburban life. But to take it out on her, it's not her fault. Like she didn't, so
but people do that all the time. Of course.
I think it's totally keeping in character. I thought it was a good scene. I'm not sure what purpose it serves in the plot, is where I'm thinking about it from a mechanical standpoint. But I think I understand where Alice is coming from. And I also feel horrible for this woman, because she's just trying to patch things up with her sister. She's just getting
brought the pears,
collateral damage here for her own trauma. But it is sad. There's a couple of details here that I think, again, are going to pay off in some way. The fact that she brings up that we had a different dad. Okay, so mom had this affair. Why do you still hold this over me? So that's interesting, that there's this whole other character that it looks like, I mean, from what I'm understanding here, that the mom had an affair with the dad, but stayed with the dad. It seems to be the case. But then she had this other man's child. And then that girl came into the home and had a good childhood. And Alice, of course, did not. So it's, I mean, I'm sure she feels terrible about how things played out, right? She feels like she got none of the breaks. And all these women, by the way, that were in similar circumstances, like she was kicked out of the house. You think about the irony here, kicked out of the house for getting pregnant. Her mom, meanwhile, had an affair and had this other child, and the dad raised this other child. Like it was okay. Yeah. So like, well, Alice got none of those. You know.
Did he? I don't know if that was entirely clear.
Maybe they got a divorce. I don't know the details.
Yeah, I feel like maybe there was infidelity. The mom got pregnant and then she moved on with the new guy.
Oh, it's possible too. Yeah. So she had a new, but yes. And then when Alice says that,
and that's partly why she didn't know about Alice's history.
True. That's a very good point. And then also when Alice mentions dad threw me out on the street, maybe she was living with her dad who was not with the mom anymore. Yes. And then got kicked out.
Right. I was thinking maybe something like that. Yeah.
Okay. That makes a little more sense, actually. Yeah.
I don't think they could have lived in the same house together without this somehow coming up at some point.
For sure. I mean, I was just thinking that it was extremely like salt in the wound here. If the other scenario where she stayed with the first husband after having the affair, and he's like, okay with raising this other child. And meanwhile, the other daughter, their actual shared daughter, gets pregnant, and they're like, "You're out of here." I'm like, "Wow!" Like you guys, you have a lot of patience for everybody else.
One pregnancy too many.
Exactly. I forgave your mom. I'm not forgiving you. But I think it makes more sense what you're saying, that she moved on with this other guy, had this daughter.
Right.
They had they raised her together, and Alice stayed with the dad and then got pregnant, and then the dad maybe like being like, you too, and then just kicked her out.
Right.
So either way, not a good outcome for her. Somehow this all gets, I should have brought it up, by the way. I guess we touched on it earlier, but I forgot to mention that, of course, we should explain before we get to what happens in the motel, that the Choi is on this redemption arc as well, where he has kind of seen what's going on, what Ed's doing. He's like, hey, goes and talks to Nora about it. Nora, I love that, by the way, that detail that Nora's taking her test, like her state mandated wellness quiz. And she's answering the questions, of course, like we all do when we take those types of quizzes or those training sessions of all that stuff. Like, of course, you answer the way you think they want you to answer.
Of course.
But I did like Choi's reaction to that guy saying, like, joint task force. The only joint I know of is a joint between like my balls and he's like, are you saying you have a bone between in your taint? He's very literal, this Choi guy, very literal with everything.
Yes, he is very literal. I love it.
And he does go and talk to Nora. And of course, Nora blows him off. But we know that those wheels are turning in Choi's. And I think Choi is going to come around. He's going to play out, and he's going to be one of the few stand-up guys here at the end, because he sees what Ed's doing. He's like, he's kind of naive too. He's just like, do you think Ed wants the cops to kill her? It's like, yes. Yes, Choi. That's exactly what Ed wants. Nora just ignores it, but he's figuring it out. He's coming around.
I mean, there is something, obviously he and Catherine are very different characters, but there is something charming about how earnest they both are.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Like it just... whether you can relate to it or not, there is just something very sweet in a way about just how it's all right there on the surface, like just out there for you to process.
Well, I mean, this show is very conscientious about having these type of mirrors. People mirror each other in positive ways and in negative ways. And I think, to your point, Choi and Nora, which get paired up a lot, are perhaps Choi is Nora at an earlier stage, where they're both very, almost like they almost seem to be like on the spectrum a little bit, where they're very literal and very You know, and even when Choi is like trying to ingratiate himself, he's working a little too hard, like he's performing a little bit.
Yeah.
Which of course you hear about that with people who are on
For
spectrum.
sure.
They kind of need to, they can't, like they're trying to act a little too hard because they don't know if they're selling it enough.
Yeah.
And then you think about Nora, it's kind of that character as well. So it is, you could see them as like they're on like different ends of this career spectrum.
Yeah.
But, and of course you have like Ed and Nora as mirrors as well, where Nora's like, I could step into his shoes potentially. Now she's been caught up in this, you know, trying to ride that bureaucratic ladder and realizing the fallout from it, where Ed doesn't care. And she does still care a little bit, more and more so as it is. And of course you have mirroring between like Alice and Kat are mirrored to each other as well. And you have Marshall and Danny as two very different characters who mirror each other in some ways. They both love Alice, of course. And Marshall is like totally not self-aware and presents himself as like really put together, but is really like this monster underneath, but doesn't see himself that way. Whereas Danny is like an open wound. He's like aware of everything around him.
Yeah.
And but he is not like in any way like trying to be smooth like Marshall or whatever, but is like I said, like they're like almost like dichotomies. But it is interesting to have these and I think Choi and Nora have been paired off together for multiple reasons.
Good point.
And then of course the big reveal comes here. Alice has been doing the work. She has figured out Elena is the daughter. I don't, was that explicitly said last week? Because they just drop it here very casually. Were we still speculating on that last week? Were we pretty certain about it?
When she's bargaining with Catherine, I think it is, I don't know if it's absolutely explicit, but Catherine is talking about how the one thing that could compel her to help is if Alice can take care of Isabel, her friend's daughter, I think is what she says.
Pimp,
yeah.
Oh, he did. Did she say explicitly her daughter? Because here,
I don't think so.
I don't remember if we speculated on it or if it was explicitly said. Because here I found it very casual, where she just calls up, she says, "Oh, by the way, I'm trying to track down this guy, big man. Do you know him?" She's talking to Nora. Nora's like, "Yeah, I've run into him a few times." And says, because Elena, who is Isabel's daughter. I was like, oh, it's just a fact now. I guess it is.
It's hard because I accepted that in my own head a few weeks ago. So now I'm not sure anymore.
And then we have this the whole episode from this point on is pretty amazing, but it starts off with Alice meeting up with Nora. She's doing karaoke. Meatloaf. I would do anything for love, parentheses. I don't want to do that. Is her go-to song. What, Sona, do you have a karaoke go-to?
Wow, that's such a good question. I feel like I used to, but I'm not sure I do anymore. And I can't even remember the song it used to be. I know it was one that was more talking than it was singing because I am fairly tone deaf. How about you? Do you have a karaoke song go-to?
I used to do Living on a Prayer, used to be my go-to, not because I like Bon Jovi, but because I could pull it off, basically. And we just karaoke'd recently.
Like you could just scream your way through it.
Exactly. As long as you have attitude, you kind of pull it off. And and then we were just karaokeing. You could have had a new karaoke song if you come on karaoke.
I could have, or I could have remembered what my old one was. Yeah.
I don't have a go-to. We did do Everybody Wants to Rule the World, which everything I picked at karaoke was just like I knew everybody, just songs that everybody would sing along to. So it makes it easy to hide your weaknesses when everybody in the room is singing.
True.
But she does go and beat her at this karaoke. More comedy here. Nora's like, I came out without a bra on. I don't have to wear a bra anymore because that's one of her life achievement goals here. I like how she tries to shake. And the guy
on the bar stool peeks over.
And she shakes her rack at him. But of course, that pays off later on that when she's running later on. She's angry that she had to run without a bra. But she lays it all on the line. Big man. Nora's like, good, you're using me. Going back to that theme here, of course. Yes. Like telling her you have to use everybody, which again, I'm not sure she'd take everything Nora says, although I think everybody's learning a lesson here. And Alice hopefully gets only the good parts of this lesson eventually. And I like the conversation they have, once they eventually find out Nora's too drunk to drive. She's like, as long as you let me sing in the car, I'll come and stake out the hotel. They're looking for Elena. They're looking for Big Man. And she tells her this story. What did you make about this story about her becoming a Fury? Again, the symbolism of Furious, of Medusa and her sisters, the Furies, of her.
Oh, and did you catch in the hospital, she makes an Icarus reference where she says she flew too close to the sun.
Yeah, and then she's talking about growing wings when she...
Which is interesting. I hadn't put this together at the time, but the idea, right, that Icarus had these wings and he flew too close to the sun and they melted, right?
Exactly.
Am I remembering that?
Yeah, he dies because his wings melt. And she grew these wings. And of course, Alice says, I got my wings. And exactly. So we've been planting a seed here that these wings as these symbolic Furies that can fly with their wings. But what happens when you fly too close to the sun?
That high school Greek mythology stuff really paying off.
Good thing. The little bit of that we know we could use here on the show. And when we go see the Odyssey in the movie.
That's right.
And then they end up in that motel room. Alice lies to Elena and says Catherine was partially complicit. You shouldn't protect her. So now it's interesting because we see this thing here where Alice is lying a little bit to everybody she sees, because now she's starting to think about if she wants to achieve these goals. Again, I'm not sure if the show morally aligns with this or if this is just Alice in the moment, but that she needs to not worry about being a good person all the time. But if she wants to accomplish this, maybe she has to become a bad person, because she lies to Elena and then she gets the phone and they call. And then what a shock, by the way, when that phone rings, she's in the bathroom. She's standing the whole time listening to this conversation.
I did not see it coming.
I did not expect that at all. I was like, and then even when the phone rings, I'm like, oh, she jumped out the window or something. And she's just standing there. It's like such a shock. And I did not expect.
She didn't have the presence of mind to put the phone on vibrate.
Good point. Yeah, she just done that. That's all she was.
She was so into eavesdropping on the conversation. She didn't realize.
And then she walks in on her in the bathroom, but then she lies to her as well and tells her, I hope, she says that the laptop is wiped, which isn't a lie, but there's more to it than that.
Right.
Obviously.
That's true.
And, but at the same time, it's just saying like, there's only one way to make this stick. He's just going to go away. You're going to prison. Jay Easton is going to die in his bed comfortably, unless you go there right now, because this goes all the way back to the conversation where Nora had this, honestly, you clarified that in my own mind, that it was kind of a BS version of the reality where it's like, if we had been able to, you had let Marshall die, then you wouldn't have Marshall on your back anymore. You don't have to keep worrying about that. And you would have caught her somehow, like you said, even though she's high in fentanyl, she's going to be able to race this girl down the street, get the drop on her, even though she's disarmed. But then they would arrest her and she would, which of course, by the way, total baloney. If Nora's team was there, they could have done the same thing, but she wasn't, they weren't. So, right. But then, they would have arrested her and then they would have finagled something for her to say like, oh, manipulated her into saying there's some piece of evidence they need at the Jay Easton house. And that at that point, that's it. They can go in. And so again, how would they even be able to let her, like in her own version of it, if they had arrested her right there, how would they have arrested her at the Jay Easton house? And so none of that makes any sense. But Alice has taken all that and said, you know what? I can make it work.
I have a plan.
And she tells her that there's no way to do this, Kat, unless you go to Jay Easton's house and then we can go in there for probable cause and get the drop on him. But Alice has overlooked something here too, which of course that every cop in the tri-state area is going to be headed to Jay Easton's house.
I'm sorry to do this. Can we rewind all the way to that scene with Danny and Alice in the apartment?
Sure.
What do you think about it? And I love Danny. I think he's the MVP of this episode. But I will say, this to me was a little bit too much white knighting for me. Danny's unilateral decision that he was not going to turn the thumb drive over in order to protect Alice.
Yes. I'm really glad.
What about that?
Yes. You know what? I'm really glad you brought it back to that, because it ties into a scene that comes later on as well, which is when Ed confronts Danny in the car. And this is honestly, this is when he's in the car with Danny, is when I was wrote down that I think that Danny might be, not long for the world.
Yeah.
For that very reason, that it's like, he plays tic-tac-toe. So nice. It's good to be a little bit of a chess player. And the fact that I do worry that it's like, he's not going to release the drive. I'm like, minimally, for me, like, I know people are not tech savvy, but like for me, whenever I watch these movies, I'm like, I'm taking that flash drive. I am putting everything into like my hard drive on my computer.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have like an email that goes to the New York Times. And then you literally can do this, by the way, for anybody out there who wants to write a script or actually needs to do this in their own life. God, hopefully it's not life or death. But if you have an email that says like, you can actually put it, and journalists do this. You could be like, I'm going to send this article out to the New York Times or whatever connection you have that can distribute it for you. And you literally have it set up where it's like in your Gmail account, you're like, send these emails in this folder at 6:00 in the morning. And then what you do is you go into the folder and you reset the clock. But if you end up dead, it gets sent out because then when someone puts a gun to your head, you're like, dude, if I don't get home at 6:00 in the morning, the New York Times is going to have your video. So I would not pull the trigger if I was you. And Danny needs to be thinking like that.
Well, so listen, this is the first thing is that, yes, I hope there is a copy of this somewhere. And the only version is not that thumb drive version. But also, just from my perspective as a woman, as a feminist, it just bothered me that he's presenting this to Alice as a decision he has unilaterally made without, she needs time to process this. I'm not saying she should make the decision in the moment either about what happens. She
says to release the video, right? And it seems to be that.
But I do love this character, but I did not love that.
Well, I mean, again, I don't actually think that it's a mistake in the writing. I think it's trying to show that there's a limitation to.
Oh, I don't think it's a mistake either. I'm just saying that, like, to me, this is something about his character that I did not care for.
Yeah. In his mind, he's thinking like, oh, but what if this video comes out? Which honestly, again, you can imagine a situation where he deletes that file before he sends it or sends it as is. I'm not sure that once they have Jay Easton's Other Powerful Men dead to rights,
the other stuff is
they're going to go and try to photographically identify every single girl in that folder. And if eventually 2 years from now they do that to see like, let's catch up, make sure these women are okay, and they do make the connection back to her, then she'll be interviewed privately. They're not going to put her on front page newspaper or something. He, I think, is being way overly cautious here. I agree, but I do think it's saying something about his character, because even though she's shocked that she's still processing this, she even says, release it. Yeah. She probably doesn't want it released. She doesn't seem to. Her body language seems to be like she's not happy about this. But yeah, you should. I mean, the only way this ends is but I think it's thematic to the show.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I think that's that scene. I'm glad you came back to it, because I think it's important to the themes of the show, that what it keeps saying over and over again is, the reason this has continued to happen for years and years and years, even when this girl turned up dead, is how many people were just like, I'm just covering up this little thing. I'm just covering my own ass. I'm just looking the other way this one time.
Yeah.
And it goes on and on. And again, it shows us here that because he's like, I don't want her to get caught up in this. You have evidence in your hand that gets these people off the streets right now. Why are you waiting again? And he's trying to be noble, but he's becoming part of the problem also.
Okay. I'm happy we revisited that. Thank you. I feel better.
No, and I'm glad you came back to it. But it actually does tie into the very next note I had, which was when he threatens him in the car. And and this is what and this is where I took the notes of saying, like, you better have a copy of that, and it better be like automatically the link to my iCloud account gets sent out to everybody. If I don't turn up if I'm not home by 5:00, everybody's going to get that email. But I hope that's the case, because I worry that he's just walking around with that on his hand. He also could have lied about it. That's the other thing I was thinking in my hand. He's like, what was in your hand? It was small enough to fit in your hand. I would have just been like, I would have just, in the moment, I mean, hopefully, but as I'm hearing that, I was thinking I could just be like, he gave me a key gave me a key to a
Yeah.
safe deposit box. And you're like, where's the safe deposit box? I'm like, he wouldn't tell me. He wouldn't tell me. He told me that he'll tell me when I need to know. So now Ed could go question the guy and you can go make a backup of your file or whatever, right? Like, he's got to be a little savvier here, this guy. He's
I agree.
Instead, he just grabs him by the scruff of the neck and throws him on the street and stomps on his face, which I was so happy to see.
It was so satisfying.
But like I said, the key lie or the backups would have been the smarter thing, nonetheless.
Yes.
But I did love seeing him like actually put Ed in the ground. And I also loved the fact that Ed immediately, hiding in his bureaucracy, picks up the phone and he's just like, he's going to start pulling his strings like he normally does, maybe like have this guy taken off the case or whatever. And he's like, what? Huh? Because at this point, like every cop already knows and they're all headed to Jay Easton's house. Too late to put the cat back into the bag. And that's, I would say that's pretty much where we get to the end of the episode. But what am I talking about? There's just a couple of more details here at the end, but some of the biggest things in this whole entire episode, the DNA. So Danny turns out, he lied to this, talk about lying and manipulation. Again, Danny, we love Danny here where he's like kind of schmoozing with this guy, like in his own obnoxious way, but trying to get the DNA investigated. He did ask his superiors, and it really speaks to the way that this organization runs, that they're like, oh, I ran the DNA even before I ran it up the flagpole because I knew that, they might want to bury something.
It's going to be a problem.
But he did run the DNA, and the DNA specifically asked, here's where Danny's actually pretty smart. Like, what can he run against? He says, run that blood, the DNA that's under the nails of the victim against Caleb Easton, who ended up dead in the very first episode of the show. And what's interesting here, Sona, is that there's a 24% match. 24% match. If it was Jay Easton, if it was the dad, it would be a 50% match. So a 24% match, that is not a parent. That is not a sibling. Siblings would be 50% also, or approximately. I mean, it could be higher or lower, obviously, but approximately 50%. 24% is very low for a sibling. That is a half-sibling. So Caleb, and I'm assuming now, this is the thing that you came around to in your aha moment, Emma may very well have been the actual murderer. We were pretty sure it wasn't Jay, but did Emma kill one of these girls because she found out she was pregnant? It was some kind of jealousy. We don't know exactly what it was, but perhaps that was the case because it sounds like definitely a sibling and maybe even a half sibling here. I'm not sure exactly how Caleb and Emma are related, but maybe they had different moms because there's a big age difference between the two of them. So possibly. So that's a big reveal. What did you think of that?
It was not surprising to me because I already had that same thought as well. So it kind of tracks and makes sense when you consider it in connection with the lawyer's comment about trying to protect her, right? It all makes sense.
I think if we do read the lawyer's reaction as protecting her specifically, I think that makes sense. And it also tracks when you think about something that I should have detailed from earlier on, where she's playing that music out in the pines, I think it's called. And which is like not the song I want to listen to while I'm while my dad is molesting. But I don't want to listen to anything at that point anyway. But while she's gardening, but she seems upset by this, so it makes you feel like she's not like complicit and loving this relationship she has with her father. She feels bad about it, but is complicit and is tied into this. And now, of course, it makes you think, well, what has bound her to him and where she could never, escape this toxic relationship with her dad? What if she's the actual murderer in that earlier case? And of course, that's another way that he's kind of bound her to him. And then that takes us to the very end of the episode. And speaking of Jay and Emma, of course, that's one of those. What did you think about this? This, I got to say, here's the scene that I said did rub me a little bit the wrong way. It's not that this guy's not one of the most repulsive people in the world. I get it. I acknowledge it. But the fact that he's just like, he cannot be without his child porn for like 10 seconds.
It doesn't make any sense.
Even as people are like coming to the house and he's just like, please don't take it away from me. I need it. I'm like, you need
Yeah.
it? What are you talking about? Like, how obsessed are you with this stuff? I mean,
that was pretty bananas. Yeah.
and I don't know anything about the psychology of these people. Maybe they are like serial killers that keep trophies. Maybe they're like obsessed with their collections. It's possible. But even if that's the case, it still just feels so ridiculous that this guy has to keep his hard drives with him at all times. Like it's
Yeah.
it does speak to the fact, of course, that he's also like, I'm untouchable. Look, nothing really bad's going to happen.
Right.
He's not talking with that cockiness. He's talking with this like desperate, like a drug addict. And I'm like, really? Like you couldn't just get rid of it for a week or two until everything clears up? Like it seemed really preposterous.
I agree. It's pretty weird.
It's the one scene that really was kind of like, what? It seemed like a little too much. Although it doesn't make him like absolutely, utterly repellent, which of course is the goal. But I was pretty repelled already. I don't need any additional. You don't have to sell it to me any harder than you already have.
Yeah, it's already really, really awful. I did love how she pushes him at the end and just steps past him.
Love that. Yeah. I love how it's really interesting performance by her there. She like shoves him down. And for a moment, she's like shocked that she's done it. But then she's just like, don't cry. She gets all cold. She's like, don't cry. It makes you look old
Got
when
things
you
to
cry. It's just, it makes you look old when you're cold, when you cry.
Yeah.
Which of course, is probably what he doesn't want to hear. And then
laying on the ground with the oxygen, and then this doesn't really help either. But yeah.
And then she's got to get her equipment to dismantle the hard drive. Yeah. And then the very final beat here. What did you make of this, by the way? This is another thing that was a little putting me off a little bit, unless she's not actually at the Easton home. First of all, it seems like maybe that was just start with that. Do you think she's already at Jay Easton's home in the end of this episode?
When
that is
Catherine is hearing Love in a Hopeless Place.
Yes.
Yeah, I assumed that she was. Did you think not?
The first time I watched it, I thought that's where she was. The second time I watched it, I did question it for a couple of reasons. One is, does this guy just allow you to park the car and walk up to his house?
Yeah, that struck me as strange also.
There's no
I was
gate.
willing to go along with
There's no security. Second of
the
all,
lawyer didn't live in a doorman building.
There you go. These people don't like security because of like all the sketchy stuff that's happening all the time.
Right.
And even when you see her leaving in the car later on, I mean, earlier on, the girl, that even when she was leaving, you couldn't really tell if they had a gate, or because, the way that it's shot, you only see the driveway in front of the house. But I couldn't really match it to the earlier shot. It didn't make sense that there's nobody else there. I figure he would have some kind of security there, or they would have at least, wouldn't Emma have called the local cops if they think he's on the way? If they don't want to alert the local cops because they still have these hard drives to get rid of or whatever, but we know that the cops are on the way as well. Why wouldn't they call the local police they don't have to, it's not like that until the New York police get there and to Connecticut, they can't put up a perimeter. And maybe there is a perimeter. Maybe there are cops right now in that moment in the bushes waiting for her to arrive. She seems to be like very not savvy about the realities of just walking into the house. Like it seems a little weird. Like she thinks she's going to walk into the house and like they're just going to invite her in or something.
I agree. It's a little weird. I mean, I also thought, like, did she Google Maps this destination? Does she remember how she got there last time?
Yes.
I mean, I had questions, but I'm willing to go along
she's
with
probably done her research, so I'm not surprised by that. And she was dating a tech expert, so I'm sure he's probably done the homework for her. So she probably had it, but it still seems like a little convenient that it seems odd. And then it did make me wonder, well, maybe I'm wrong that she's rolling up to this house. Maybe she's somewhere else and she is making a stop along the way, because it seems like, it doesn't seem like that's how that is going to play out. Although, of course, that's what we really want to see next week. I want to see Kat and Alice and Emma taking this guy apart, basically. The three Uris. Maybe that's it.
Oh, good point.
Unless Nora can pop in there too. Got another one in there.
Yeah, because I think Emma's going to be more concerned with saving her own skin. But maybe.
Emma still wants to kill her dad, though, pretty clearly.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so we'll see how. I'm not sure how that's all going to play out next week, because it does seem a little far-fetched that the cops wouldn't already be there ahead of her. But like I said, maybe they are, and maybe they've spoken to the people in the house already, and they're going to let her walk in there, and they think they have the upper hand, and yet they don't. We'll see. Anyway, I cannot wait to see how it wraps up.
I know.
Cannot wait to see.
I agree. I'm really just very, very excited about all of this.
I can't wait. So after next week, I honestly don't even know I know what we're covering next, but we have a gap, so we'll figure out what to do with that gap. So anyway, next week, a finale, of course, and then what Sona and I are going to do. And we have a 3-week gap, I think, between this and our next show. And what we'll be watching in the meantime. I think one thing we're probably going to watch is Black Widow, which is a 1987 psychological thriller that this is based on. So we can watch it and do a comparison to see where the inspiration came from. I hear they're very, very different, but hey, why? I've never seen it, so I'm very curious to check it out anyway. And it's available to stream, so we can. And then I have a couple other ideas before we start our next show, which I'll announce that. I'll leave that as a little teaser. We'll announce it next week.
I can't wait to find out.
Well, you know already, but
I think you
haven't done the math yet, but you know what it is. All right, Sona, thank you again for the conversation, and I'll see you this weekend.
That's right. Looking forward to it.
Thanks. Bye.
Take care.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.